When we think about the African slave trade, many of us envision the brutal Middle Passage and the dehumanizing conditions on American plantations. While these images are accurate, they represent only a fraction of a complex and often overlooked history. This essay seeks to uncover the lesser-known aspects of the African slave trade, delving into the dynamics that schools often gloss over, the roles of various participants, and the profound impacts on African societies. 1. The very faces of slavery in Africa. Contrary to popular belief, slavery in Africa did not begin with the transatlantic slave trade. Long before Europeans arrived, various forms of servitude existed on the continent. African societies practiced different forms of slavery, including debt bondage, war captives, and servitude due to criminal punishment. However, these forms of slavery were often fundamentally different from the chattel slavery seen in the Americas. In many African communities, enslaved people could integrate into their captor societies, own property, and even rise to prominent positions. 2. The Arab slave trade, an overlooked chapter. One of the most overlooked aspects of the African slave trades is the Arab slave trade. Beginning in the 7th century, Arab traders transported millions of Africans across the Sahara Desert and the Indian Ocean to the Middle East and other parts of Asia. This trade continued for over a millennium, predating and outlasting the transatlantic slave trade. While the exact numbers are hard to pinpoint, it is estimated that 10 to 18 million Africans were enslaved and transported during this period. The Arab slave trade had distinct characteristics compared to the transatlantic trade. Enslaved Africans in the Arab world were often used as domestic servants, soldiers, and laborers. Some even served in royal courts, achieving significant status and influence. However, the mortality rate was alarmingly high due to harsh conditions during transportation and the rigorous demands of their labor. 3. African involvement in the slave trades. A controversial yet crucial aspect of the slave trade is the involvement of African rulers and merchants. Many African kingdoms and empires participated in the slave trade, selling prisoners of war, criminals, and even their acts to European and Arab traders. This involvement was driven by various factors, including economic incentives, political strategy, and the desire to acquire European goods such as firearms, textiles, and alcohol. For instance, the Kingdom of Dahomey in West Africa became notorious for its role in the slave trade. The Dahomeyan military conducted raids on neighboring regions, capturing people to be sold into slavery. The profits from these transactions bolstered the kingdom's economy and military might, enabling it to expand its influence and territory. 4. The impact on African societies. The consequences of the slave trade on African societies were devastating and far-reaching. The loss of millions of people, particularly young men and women, led to significant demographic changes, weakening many communities and disrupting social structures. The constant threat of slave raids instilled fear and instability, hampering economic development and fostering an environment of mistrust and violence. Moreover, the focus on capturing and trading enslaved individuals diverted attention from other economic activities. Regions heavily involved in the slave trade often neglected agriculture and industry, leading to long-term economic stagnation. The introduction of European goods also altered local economies, creating dependencies that would have lasting effects even after the abolition of the slave trade. 5. Resistance and rebellion. Despite the pervasive nature of the slave trades, resistance and rebellion were common. Enslaved Africans frequently resisted their captors through various means, including escape, sabotage, and armed uprisings. These acts of defiance highlight the resilience and determination of those subjected to the horrors of slavery. One notable example of resistance is the Maroons of Jamaica, who were escaped enslaved people who established independent communities in the island's interior. They fought numerous battles against British colonial forces, eventually securing treaties that granted them autonomy and land. Similarly, in the Americas, figures like Toussaint Louverture in Haiti led successful revolts that culminated in the abolition of slavery and the establishment of independent states. 6. The cultural impact. The slave trade also had profound cultural impacts, both in Africa and the diaspora. The forced migration of millions of Africans led to the dispersion of cultures, languages, and traditions across the globe. Enslaved Africans in the Americas and the Arab world preserved aspects of their heritage, blending them with new influences to create rich, hybrid cultures. In the Americas, the African diaspora played a crucial role in shaping the cultural landscape, from music and dance to cuisine and religion. African traditions deeply influenced the development of new cultural expressions. For instance, African rhythms and musical styles gave rise to genres like jazz, blues, and samba, which continue to resonate globally. 7. The role of religion and ideology. Religion and ideology played significant roles in justifying and perpetuating the slave trades. In the Arab world, Islamic law allowed for the enslavement of non-Muslims, which facilitated the capture and trade of Africans. However, it also provided certain protections and rights for enslaved people, creating a complex legal and social framework around slavery. In Europe and the Americas, Christian ideologies were often twisted to justify the enslavement of Africans. Enslavers argued that they were bringing civilization and Christianity to heathen populations, framing slavery as a morally and religiously sanctioned enterprise. This ideological manipulation helped to rationalize the brutal exploitation of millions of people. 8. Abolition and its aftermath. The abolition of the slave trades and slavery itself was a protracted and contentious process. The transatlantic slave trade was officially abolished by Britain in 1807 and by the United States in 1808, but illegal trading persisted for decades. The complete abolition of slavery followed later, with Britain emancipating enslaved people in its colonies in 1833 and the United States in 1865. In the Arab world, the abolition of slavery was more gradual and complex, with some regions officially outlawing the practice only in the mid-20th century. The legacies of the slave trades and slavery continue to affect societies globally, with enduring social, economic, and racial disparities. 9. The call for reparations and reconciliation. In recent years, there has been growing momentum for reparations and reconciliation. Descendants of enslaved people and activists argue that the profound injustices and lasting impacts of the slave trades warrant compensation and acknowledgement from former colonial powers and participating African states. This movement seeks financial reparations and a deeper understanding and recognition of the historical traumas inflicted. Efforts towards reconciliation also emphasize education and public memory. Initiatives to incorporate comprehensive histories of the slave trades into school curricula and public discourse aim to address the gaps and biases that have long characterized the portrayal of this history. 10. The importance of remembering. Understanding the full scope of the African slave trade is crucial for acknowledging the resilience and agency of those who endured such immense suffering. It challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths and reflect on how history continues to shape present realities. By shedding light on these untold stories, we honor the memories of those who were silenced and ensure that their experiences are not forgotten. In conclusion, the history of the African slave trades is a complex and multifaceted story that extends far beyond the transatlantic trade. It encompasses a variety of practices, regions, and impacts that have profoundly shaped the world. By exploring these often overlooked aspects, we gain a deeper understanding of the resilience, creativity, and enduring spirit of African peoples throughout history. That's all for today's video. If you found this video insightful and want to stay updated, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.